A judge shot to death in his chambers by his good friend, the now former sheriff. Now, new details are coming to light about what could have been going on in the background involving the judge and sex in his chambers.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. Well, I promised you an update when something substantial changed in the case of the Kentucky judge that was murdered by the sheriff. Well, earlier in the week, some pretty bombshell allegations, actually I wouldn't even call them allegations at this point, I think they've been pretty well substantiated. But the very existence of these claims and the amount of time that has spanned since they were made, and since we're now getting information about them, leads me to believe that there's some serious corruption going on down in Letcher County, Kentucky. So essentially, the basis of it is that Judge Kevin Mullins is accused of trading favoritism from the court for sexual favors with female inmates. So we're going to talk a little bit more about my sort of theories as to what might be going on here, but we're going to go ahead and watch the first part of the story, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more.
The shooting of Judge Mullins shocked anyone who heard about it. You just don't hear about something like this happening, and if you do, the shooter certainly isn't the county sheriff. Longtime friends, Letcher County Sheriff Mickey Stines and Judge Kevin Mullins went to lunch together, and within a matter of hours, Stines was recorded on video shooting Mullins. In the background of all of this, a federal civil lawsuit filed by a woman named Sabrina Atkins. She was arrested in 2021 for a drug charge. Atkins is now suing the Letcher County Sheriff's Office over a former deputy named Ben Fields having sex with her while she was on home incarceration. Atkins claimed in her suit that she couldn't afford to pay for the ankle bracelet and was afraid to go back to jail. So Fields, who was supervising her on home incarceration, offered to help her in exchange for sex. Atkins said she and Fields had sex in Judge Mullins' chambers 6 times. Fields eventually was charged criminally and served 6 months in jail. He's supposed to be on probation for 6.5 years. In 2022, investigators with the Kentucky Attorney General's office interviewed Sabrina Atkins, and she claimed to have seen tapes of Judge Mullins having sex with a woman in his chambers.
But he does have some videotapes of some stuff in the judge's chambers.
What kind of stuff?
Just with girls, sexual and stuff.
What describe? Have you seen the videos?
I've seen one partly, and just him having sex with girls for the able to get out of jail.
Who was having sex?
Ben and just some higher ups up there.
Who?
The judge and.
Now you saw the video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What did you see on the video? I mean, you.
I mean, I've seen Judge Mullins having sex with a girl.
Who was the girl?
I don't know, because I don't know a lot of people from over there.
Where was it at?
In his office, in the judge's chambers.
Is that the same place that you were meeting Ben? Is that how you know it was the judge in chambers?
Yeah.
And this was Judge who?
Mullins.
But you don't know who the girl was?
Mm-hmm.
But you just saw the judge?
Right.
Do you know for sure that was the judge?
Yes.
I mean, how do you know that's the judge?
I've been in front of him. His face is pretty clear on there. Like I said, my only goal is to make sure this don't happen to somebody else. I struggle with it real bad.
When I first covered the preliminary hearing with this case, there was a myriad of different potential motives. You have the judge having the sheriff's daughter's phone number on his phone. You have the sheriff attempting to call his daughter from his own phone and her not answering. And then you have him calling from the judge's phone and then hanging directly up and then shooting the judge in the judge's chambers. Okay, so that was one potential motive, that maybe there was something going on. There was a theory floating out there that potentially the wife and daughter of the sheriff were victims of domestic abuse who were fleeing, and because they had a relationship with Judge Mullins, that they were potentially using him as an avenue of escape from Sheriff Stines. And then sort of lurking in the background was always this very tight-lipped allegation related to former Deputy Ben Fields. Now, I don't know what it's like in the area where you live, but it's difficult to get access to the judge's chambers by yourself. It's just somewhere you don't hang out. And I'm friends, like personal friends with several judges. I don't help myself to their chambers. I never, ever, ever would do that. And I realized that because he was the bailiff, that he might have had sort of access that other people didn't have, but still, I guess the point I'm trying to make is it would be difficult to utilize the judge's chambers for something like this without the judge being aware of it. And so it is beginning to emerge as more than just we had one deputy on a power trip abusing his authority. This seems like it's an actual scandal that involves multiple people. And we're going to find out from Adkins' attorney that this story was actually told in 2022 when Adkins filed her lawsuit. And it came about as a result of her filing her lawsuit, making these accusations, and subsequently being interviewed by the Kentucky Attorney General's office. And that's where the charges originated for Deputy Ben Fields that resulted in all of this sort of snowballing. And so what you have is Sabrina Adkins and other female inmates, and they are connected to this deputy, Ben Fields. And Ben Fields is basically extorting at least Sabrina Adkins and a couple other women for sex in exchange for sort of a good report. This is actually a home confinement or home incarceration situation where you have a separate division of the sheriff's department that is basically functioning as a probation office to get somebody to keep up with people who are home but on an ankle monitor to make sure that they're complying with conditions. So basically instead of jail, they will put an ankle monitor on you, a GPS device, and say, okay, well, you have to be confined to your house for a period of time, let's say a year, 6 months, whatever it is. During this period of time, you can only go so far. Anytime they violate that, it works pretty much the same like probation. They just file a warrant on them and they revoke the home confinement and put them in actual jail. Probation pretty much works the same way. It's just that with probation, you just don't have necessarily in every case the restriction of having the ankle monitor. And so, if a probation officer has, say, 100 people on their caseload, well, they don't have like a GPS device popping off all the time telling them, hey, Sabrina's doing A, B, C, or D. They rely on those people to come to the meetings and, keep their appointments and that kind of thing. They see people, once a month or maybe once a week or whatever, and they may randomly drug screen them or whatever, but it's not like a constant monitoring system. Whereas if you have an ankle monitor, there are going to be alerts sent to the person that's supervising you. And it appears that Mr. Fields is that supervising officer. And so he was using his authority to say, hey, look, you're either going to do what I'm going to ask you to do or you're going to go back to jail, and extorting these women into having sex with him. And in the case of Sabrina Adkins, which we're going to hear in just a second, he was actually loaning her out or pimping her out to other people. This was a serious, it's sex trafficking is actually what it is. You wouldn't think that you'd have sex trafficking in a court in America, or maybe some of you guys would. It's a little bit of a surprise to me, I'll be honest with you. Not that I think the government's incapable of doing shocking things, because they do it all the time, but this is it's something I've never really known to happen in all of my time. Now, it could be that I'm naive, I guess, but certainly not something that I've ever heard of in areas where I've worked. But let's go ahead and listen to the interview of Sabrina Adkins' attorney, and then we're going to come back and sort of talk about some of the gaps in information that we're getting out of this case.
I want to bring in Ned Pillersdorf. He represents Sabrina Adkins in her civil suit against Letcher County. So Ned, first of all, tell me your thoughts, your response to this audio that's come out. Obviously, you've known about this for a while, where Sabrina is basically telling the investigators, I've seen videotapes of Judge Mullins and other higher-ups having sex with women in the judge's chambers.
I was present when she told that to the Attorney General investigator. The chronology was we filed the lawsuit on behalf of Sabrina and another woman who we claim was sexually extorted for favors. That other woman, by the way, is now deceased. And after that lawsuit got filed, Sabrina sat down with a representative of the Kentucky Attorney General office and gave a 4 or 5 hour interview. And in that interview, she said what you just mentioned. We filed a sweeping lawsuit against the bailiff, I guess, / ankle bracelet operator. And we allege that the county knew or should have known, specifically Sheriff Stines, about the sexual extortion. And, 2 years later, everything Sabrina said has turned out to be true. How do we know that? After we filed the civil lawsuit, the Attorney General's office moved in indicted Fields. And significantly, if you go through Fields, he was the bailiff, ankle bracelet operator. He pled guilty to everything we said. And there were some pretty sweeping allegations. And he is a convicted felon, sex offender. And, you know, in terms of Sabrina, I know she's under the spotlight. I'm not objective, I'm her lawyer. But I think she's been pretty courageous. And, you know, and probably one of the most important things in terms of the criminal justice system, I've only been a criminal defense lawyer in Appalachia for 43 years. What's changed dramatically is the number of women who are in drug court ankle bracelet situations. They are so vulnerable to sexual extortion. We don't think what happened to Sabrina and the other 3 women we know Fields extorted. We don't think that's an isolated incident. And we're frankly, the reason I'm talking to you today, we're hoping that the national publicity would be that if you're running an ankle bracelet program, a drug court program, which in Appalachia, half the participants are women, how easily extortable these women are for sexual extortion, which is clearly what happened in our case.
Sabrina mentions about in the interview with the AG's office, you were there. I don't have to tell you what she said, but she says clearly that Judge Mullins was having sex with girls, and she could have just meant women. We don't know, but she saw what she saw on the videotapes. Has any investigation been done, to your knowledge, by the AG's office into Judge Mullins? She said other higher ups too. So was there ever any type of further investigation into what was going on in that courthouse?
I obviously don't know. I don't think they would confide in me. What I do know is, you know, since then, unbelievably, the sheriff shot the judge. And I do know the lawyer for the sheriff is a very competent lawyer, basically said our lawsuit was, I forgot his exact words, were front and center of their defense. You know,
they're
everybody
investigating it. That's what he told me. You know, they're going to look into every aspect of that.
He made some comment after the arraignment. This is the criminal defense lawyer, Mr. Bartley. They asked him, was his case related to my civil lawsuit, the allegations? And he basically said yes. And I know right after that, my phone was ringing.
So I guess the elephant in the room that I don't understand is that this happened in 2022. It's starting to look like, and don't get me wrong, I don't feel bad for this piece of garbage who was extorting these women. I'm just saying it's starting to look a little bit like he was the fall guy for some more important people who have remained anonymous in this. And so I have some questions for the Kentucky State Police and the Kentucky Attorney General. Why have we never heard about an investigation into Judge Kevin Mullins before now? Why is it that we don't learn about any of this stuff that they've known for over 2 years until, oh my God, there's a homicide and Judge Mullins has been shot by the sheriff? I mean, you have to wonder, if you're a reasonable person with the ability to critically think, is Sheriff Stines involved in this sextortion? Was this bailiff who would be working directly with the judge and in charge of the judge's courtroom, was he setting these women up for Judge Mullins? Was the motive for the murder related to, hey, I'm not the only one who's going to be held accountable for this. My deputy has been charged criminally. I'm being sued as the head of the department. You were expressly named in the deposition. You think I'm going to lose everything to protect you? And then, oh, by the way, you're talking to my daughter too? You know, there's a lot of layers to this. And I'm wondering why everybody's been so tight-lipped about, these are pretty serious allegations about a judge at a trial court in Kentucky that they've been sitting on for 2 years and nobody said anything about it. And we still don't have any information about how this is entangling Judge Mullins directly, other than this one thing.
You know, I've wondered from day one. I mean, we took the sheriff's deposition in the room I'm sitting in on a Monday. 3 days later, we know he shot and killed the judge. Were those events related? I don't know. Um, as a result of that, what investigations are going on, not going on, uh, I don't know. The only good that's come out of this unbelievable tragedy is there has been interest in making sure that the ladies like Sabrina, who I think has been courageous, and exposing how vulnerable these women are. What role Judge Mullins had or didn't have, we don't know. What Sabrina said during the interview, and like I said, she says in the interview that she saw a video, as I understand it, that another woman apparently clandestinely videoed the judge acting inappropriately. And the way she saw the video was the girl's boyfriend showed it to her. We don't have the video. We have Sabrina's word for what she saw. But all I'll say is, 2 years in, everything Sabrina sat in my office and told me 2 years ago is proven to be true. I mean, the lawsuit we filed was sweeping. We have really said, and I've used the word brothel, that they turned that courthouse into something like a brothel. I mean, and Sabrina's allegations are more than just that she was forced to have sex in the judge's chambers. The one moment I won't forget in all of this is when Sabrina was interviewed by the Attorney General office. This is before Fields got indicted. She described how they pimped her out, that she was told that she could get somehow preferential treatment in the courthouse by having sex with this elderly gentleman. And she did it. She was being extorted, which goes to the point we've been trying to make is how vulnerable these women are in drug court and ankle bracelet situations. We've seen, and 42 years ago, I'm a criminal defense lawyer, you hardly ever saw a woman indicted. If you go to a criminal court today in Appalachia, most of the criminal defendants are women, drug charges. I think I've got maybe 14 or 15 pending now, and they are so subject to what happened to Sabrina. We don't think what happened to her is an isolated incident. Women who are in drug court or ankle bracelet, the way the game is played, they know that a simple phone call to the judge will say, hey, she violated an ankle bracelet condition or she violated a drug court condition. They're back in jail. And they know they may not be believed if they say this is not true. So in a way, what happened to Sabrina, while in some ways is surprising, it was almost foreseeable in that someone like Fields would take advantage of her. And in his case, took advantage to the extreme where I still can't get over the fact that he pimped her out and she felt compelled to comply. All the alternative is back in jail.
You mentioned earlier something about her possibly having sex with an elderly gentleman. That was something that was brought up. Who is that elderly gentleman?
I don't want to say his name.
Was it Judge Mullins? I mean, he doesn't seem elderly to me.
It was not Judge Mullins. It's in the lawsuit we filed, and it's something Fields frankly acknowledged during his eventual guilty plea. And by the way, it was a guilty plea.
Yes,
this was
he
not
admitted
no
to
contest.
it fully. Yes.
Yeah, I spoke to the Attorney General who prosecuted the case, Barbara Whaley, who's been a prosecutor here in Kentucky for 40 years. And I asked her, what was Mullins' defense? I take that back. I misspoke. What was Fields' defense? And she flat out said, Ned, he had no defense. Pled guilty. He confessed.
And nobody has disputed it. Have you noticed that? Not one person from the Kentucky State Police, not one person from Kevin Mullins' family, not one person from the Kentucky Attorney General's office, not one person representing the Board of Judicial Conduct or anybody that might have been involved in any investigation is out here saying, yes, we conducted an investigation and we found no merit in what she said. No, the guy admitted that it was true. He pled guilty to the charges. So in closing, the way this affects the trial is a couple different ways. It's still sort of up in the air. Will the people of Kentucky say, we don't care that Judge Mullins was murdered because he was a sex offender, essentially, who was taking advantage of people with a drug addiction problem and using their situation against them to sexually extort them. And so we're glad the sheriff killed him, and so not guilty. Or are they going to say it's apparent that Sheriff Stines was involved in this extortion and killed the judge because he wasn't happy with the fact that he was taking all the heat and the judge was getting none of it? So now the judge is dead. We're going to put him in prison for the rest of his life. First-degree murder, because that certainly would play into much more of a premeditation than what we've seen so far. What it looks like right now is that we've got the sheriff popping off in the heat of the moment. Now, I don't know what the intellect of Sheriff Stines is. Could Sheriff Stines have set that whole thing up? Is it possible that Sheriff Stines called his daughter, and then when she didn't answer, call from the judge's phone, and when she did answer, immediately jump into, okay, I'm going to go ahead and shoot him? Like, was that whole thing staged as a way to avoid the obvious nature of the premeditation? Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen with this case? But it is interesting. And the way that this jury gets tainted is going to be interesting because, look, people talk. People in Appalachian communities are always on this sort of conspiracy thing. And maybe it's because it's true. It's not a conspiracy if it's true, right? So when conspiracies start becoming reality, you have to start asking some serious questions about, well, what is actually going on here? So I just thought this was an interesting update. I thought you guys might be interested in hearing these details if you haven't already. Anything that changes, of course, I'm going to pop in and do a short video to sort of explain what the update is, but it will be interesting to see what happens with this case and how it continues to play out. I think the public deserves some answers as to what the Kentucky Attorney General and the Kentucky State Police know about Judge Mullins' conduct and who they reported it to and what, if anything, was being done about it. I'm also going to start digging into the documents with the lawsuit to try to figure out who this mystery old guy is that Sabrina Atkins was forced to have sex with, because I'm intrigued about who that person might be. For some reason, everybody's being hush-hush about that too. So that's all for this one, guys. I hope you got something from it. What'll happen with this case, your guess is as good as mine. If you'd like to support the Southern Draw Law channel, I don't do any types of memberships, but I will leave my PayPal and Venmo links both here on the screen as well as in the description. Please remember to like and subscribe and let me know what you guys think is going on in this case that maybe I haven't thought about. Check out some of the other videos on the channel and leave a comment on there as well. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.